Good morning, everyone. Welcome to SearchLeeds, and thank you for choosing the second stage. My name is Sam Marsden, and I'm SEO and Content Manager at DeepCrawl. And it's a real honor to be speaking here for the first time. However, I'm going to level with you. I was slightly annoyed when I found out that my colleague and fellow DeepCrawler, Jennifer Hoffman, she's going to be speaking on the main stage later today. The burning egotist inside of me was slightly annoyed by that. I wanted my own entrance music, but I kind of think of it a bit like a music festival. We're not going with the slides. So yeah, you can see the big name bands on the main stage, but really everyone knows that all the cool kids, they go to the smaller stages to see the edgy indie bands. So I think that's what we can try and create here today. But today, I'm going to be talking about enterprise SEO. And this is a really interesting area of SEO because it's working at the extremes of what we do. So it's very much a stress test of SEO methodologies. But before we launch into some of the challenges of enterprise SEO, I just want to take you through some of the definitions and how we might define what enterprise SEO actually is, because it's not actually as straightforward as you might think. So we polled the SEO community on Twitter and asked them what is the key aspect of enterprise SEO? And we got a mixture of responses. So some people said it was the size of the organization, some said it was the size of the website, and some said it was a mix of the two, which I'm kind of inclined to agree with here. We had 13% of people that said it was something else. However, that's about 50 people in terms of who replied, but they didn't actually explain what they meant. So I think that what that tells us is actually that there are 50 people who are just going to be absolute smartasses when you poll when you run a poll. But another interesting explanation of it was looking at the size of the decision-making chain as well. So that's another interesting way of looking at it. But it's not that straightforward, and I think there was such a mix of responses because an enterprise company doesn't necessarily equal an enterprise-sized site. We've got the likes of British Gas, Lloyds Bank, HSBC with net incomes in the billions. But if you look at how many pages they've actually got indexed in search, it's only a few thousand each. However, so you wouldn't say that they've got an enterprise-sized site, but these are definitely enterprise companies. So I've kind of settled on a definition for enterprise SEO by defining it by the size and complexity of the organization. And more often than not, they're going to house a large portfolio of different domains. So the likes of Lloyds, for example, they own Halifax and I think HBOS, so they're likely to have other sites. But also, they're likely to have big sites as well. And there's also likely to be a long kind of chain of command as well with which to get things actioned within these companies. So the reason that I'm talking about this is because at DeepCrawl we work with a lot of enterprise clients and we see a lot of challenges that they face. So that's why I'm here today talking about that. I'm going to be taking you through 4 different challenges. So the first one is looking at size and scale, so looking at how can you analyze these huge sites effectively. We're going to then look at how you can audit and prioritize all of these. Once you've analyzed the site, we're going to look at how you can audit these and collate these in a meaningful way and prioritize them as well. We're then going to look at reporting and monitoring as well as the velocity of completion, which is a kind of fancy way of saying getting things done. So looking at scale, so issue amplification is the main thing here. So when you've got a huge site, you've got loads and loads of problems that you could potentially encounter. But how do you actually extract insights for an entire enterprise site when you've got maybe tens of millions of pages on that site? It isn't time efficient to analyze and crawl the whole site, and it often isn't resource intensive. It's resource intensive, so it's not going to be. It's going to be quite costly to analyze the site in its entirety. So we need to be a bit a bit smarter about how we go about analyzing these sites. So in most cases, we only actually need to validate issues. We don't actually need to see the whole extent of a problem. We can find representative problems and kind of make assumptions about the extent of them on the entire site. So we can think about this by looking at this optical illusion here. So you can see that there's a cube here. You can see the bigger picture, but it's made up of smaller parts. You don't need all of the lines drawn in to see that. And that's how we think about how we analyze and crawl enterprise sites. So we kind of call this tactical crawling at deep crawl, and it's how you can create really kind of smart crawls which don't go off and analyze all of the pages, but look at much smaller parts of that. And there are a couple of techniques that we can use to do this. So we've got sampling and slicing. So sampling is taking a proportion of the pages across the site, and slicing is very much looking at distinct sections of the site itself. And we put these together, these kind of techniques, into a crawling roadmap for our clients. So we begin with a baseline analysis looking at we might set off a crawl and just see what comes back with a subset. We might put a limit on it of like 1 million URLs for a large site. And then when that comes back, we design some hypotheses and come up with some tests to further validate these issues. And then once we've got an idea of the problem, we can implement some fixes and then monitor how they perform, how they do over time, with some benchmark analysis. So these are even more targeted, smaller crawls looking at just seeing how the issue is progressing over time. So an example of this is that we have a large marketplace client. So we set off an initial crawl of 2 million URLs. We then had 15 more targeted crawls that we set to test various hypotheses. And then we set up some ongoing benchmark crawls to see how they were doing. This could be a whole talk in itself. And my colleague Rachel Costello, I think a couple of Brighton SEOs ago, she spoke about this. So I'd really recommend listening to the podcast of that talk to find out about that in more detail. But we're going to talk about auditing and prioritization now. So once you know how you're going to analyze the site, how do you bring this all together in an effective audit, and how do you prioritize recommendations as well? And the challenges here are how do you find the issues that really matter and that are going to move the needle and have a big impact? And also, how do you prioritize these, and how do you create a model around that? So when an enterprise client comes to us and asks to run an audit, we provide a really thorough technical audit of the entire site, and we provide most of this within a huge document. But we split this into 12 core sections with different recommendations and prioritization at the end of each of these 12 sections, and then we provide an executive overview that's usually right at the top. So it's just a really concise summary of what we found and the most important issues and fixes that we recommend. So in terms of prioritization, the way that we go about this is we look at effort and impact, and we score these from 1 to 5. We multiply these together, and that gives us a severity score, which we can then translate into a priority level. So this is at the end of each section, and it's really easy for clients to look through and see what is the problem, and is it something that we should be dedicating resource to fixing. Some of the common issues that we see on enterprise sites are the proportion of primary pages. We often find that there are lots of pages which just aren't being crawled and indexed by Google. So that's something that we seek to fix as a matter of high priority. We also find quite commonly that there are iframes breaking the head of a page. So that's something that we seek to fix as well. Another common problem is crawl depth. So pages lying maybe 20 levels deep within the site. That's not good for users, that's not good for search engines, and something that needs to be fixed. We also have excessive internationalization, which is something that we experience with a technology company that we work with. So they had a ridiculous number of country and language combinations in the URL path. It was so ridiculous to the extent that there were pages for Kazakh speakers, so people in Kazakhstan, so Kazakh speakers in Switzerland, and that doesn't really make sense. So you can't imagine that there are very many people that would be relevant for. But being the stickler for detail that I am, I actually found the embassy of Kazakhstan in Switzerland, and it does actually exist. And a guy called Mukhtar, I think, he got back to me with some figures, and he told me that there are actually 200 people that are Kazakh speakers within Switzerland. So that's a great success if you're one of these people, but from an SEO perspective, from a business perspective, this level of internationalization makes no real sense. So that's something that we went about fixing. We implemented hreflang as well. However, we found that even with correct implementations in place, Google still isn't great at showing the right pages to the right audiences. And it might be that their algorithm for swapping out alternates isn't working as precisely as we expect, or it might be that they're just not kind of built to deal with complex sites with this many number of alternate versions. But I'm going to switch gears and talk about reporting and monitoring, which is something that I've been speaking about a lot over the past year, particularly my love of Google Data Studio. But with regards to enterprise sites, the challenges are keeping on top of issues as they arise on a large-scale site, but also maintaining a top-level perspective across a wide portfolio of digital properties. So we worked with a large media publisher, and they were undergoing a large-scale migration. And I say large-scale, but that's probably a bit of an understatement. They were migrating 300,000 subdomains over the course of 6 months, and they managed to do that successfully, but monitoring and reporting was extremely important throughout this process. They even actually had to contact Google directly to give them a heads up and say, look, we're moving a ridiculous number of subdomains. They just wanted to give them a heads up, so yeah. But really, the important thing is to dashboard all of the things and become obsessed with communicating things effectively through visualizations. So I've got a number of different examples. So you can dashboard things within Search Console to surface these top-level trends and find these more granular issues as well. If you want to find out more about that, I've written a post that you can find here. But particularly with the enterprise level, we ran a webinar with Nick Wilson of Vodafone, and he was talking about how he's completely revolutionized reporting within Vodafone. So he's standardized reporting across 52 international markets, which is quite an achievement. But the thing that I really liked about what he spoke about was that he split these dashboards into 4 key areas. So he's got performance dashboards for real top-level stakeholders, so people right at the top. These don't feature SEO KPIs, but kind of more revenue-focused metrics. And then there are planning dashboards, and these are for SEO team leaders. And then you've got control and action dashboards as well. So these are much more for people who are down in the weeds of actual optimization itself. Also, with regards to dashboarding enterprise sites, I'd really recommend focusing on crawl metrics. So at Deep Crawl, we've got an enterprise, for our enterprise clients, we've got a Data Studio connector, and these allow us to blend crawl insights with different aspects of different data sources telling us about page performance, so Google Analytics, Search Console, and then we can create crawling and indexing dashboards as well with these crawl insights, as well as looking at different canonicalization signals as well from a really top level. Then multi-domain keyword cannibalization. This is something that is very important for an enterprise site. You want to make sure that you're not ranking for the same queries across different sites and duplicating effort. So we created a dashboard looking at how you can do this. It has changed because this dashboard is reliant on property sets, which have actually been deprecated from Search Console now. But I think using something like Supermetrics, you'd be able to stitch together data from different domains so that you can see where you're ranking for the same queries across different domains and look to fix that. I also wanted to mention this dashboard, which shows something similar. It's from Hannah Butler. It was released a couple of weeks ago. I had a look at it the other day, and it's really useful, so I'd recommend having a look at that. It's a really good way of seeing cannibalization across different domains. So we've also got top-level speed metrics as well. So looking at the Chrome User Experience Report, you can build out some really good top-level dashboards across all of your different properties for all of the different metrics that Google is taking into account using Chrome usage data. And you can see me channel my inner Rand Fishkin with a Whiteboard Friday that I had published. So check that out if that's something that is interesting to you. We're going to finish off looking at the velocity of completion. So this basically is referring to the challenges of actually getting SEO fixes actioned and also getting different stakeholders brought in, because if you're working in a large organization, you're likely to be working with different teams that don't really care about SEO, so it's your job to influence and persuade them to care about these. And for this, it's much less about kind of technical competencies, but much more about soft skills and your ability to have influence within your organization. And we ran a webinar earlier this month with Eli Schwartz, who's formerly of SurveyMonkey. And what I found interesting about his talk was within an enterprise organization, you need to build strong internal and external networks to have influence and kind of show yourself as an authority within SEO. You need to be a hub of influence between these different departments and be in conversation with them. So it's not enough just to buy them a beer, buy them some pizza. You need to have kind of long-lasting relationships with these people to have influence and to get SEO initiatives actually actioned. You also need to prove ROI and kind of build a way of communicating the value of SEO and score more budget, but also you need to lead with revenue KPIs and not just SEO KPIs, because that's not going to mean anything to people outside of SEO. So talking less about rankings and talking in a language that actually resonates with the people that you need to communicate with. So wrapping this all up. So I've spoken about 4 different challenges. So we've talked about size and scale and the challenges around crawling huge sites. We spoke about auditing and prioritization. So how can you bring all of these insights together in a meaningful way, as well as reporting and monitoring, and the velocity of completion as well, so getting things actioned. The solutions to these are tactical analysis, so designing different segments to analyze sites efficiently, creating a hierarchy of recommendations, so providing proper prioritization and making sure that things are clear throughout an audit, and then looking at building top-level dashboards that provides the relevant insights to different stakeholders within an organization, as well as soft skills and developing just being influential within a large company as well. So if you've got any questions, find me after. I'm going to be around all of today. Send me a tweet. I'm at Sam_Marsden on Twitter. Thank you very much for your time.